Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is May the 29th, and we are live right now on Rumble and on YouTube, on X and others. Thanks for joining me this morning. I hope you guys are having a decent morning. I'm having one of those mornings where I can't make up my mind. So I'm going to put it to the chat. I'm going to give it out there to you all. I'm going to let you all decide. Before we get into the show, I've got a couple of options for you. And the chat is going to get to decide, our live viewers over on YouTube, our live viewers on Rumble, and so on. Here's what it looks like. We've got some headlines, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't cover some headlines and talk about some of the things that are going on. I'll just give you kind of a quick overview of them. It's kind of like Donald Trump is a meanie head. That's kind of where they go. And Democrats don't know what to do or put anybody in charge. So that's one thing. We can do that up front. As Steve Friend says, we can eat dinner first or dessert first. And then I've got Dash Bongino versus Dash Bongino versus former FBI directors, including Ray and Comey. And I'm going to probably spend the bulk of our show doing that, but I'll let you guys decide if you want to do that up front or if you want to do it secondarily. So let me know if you want Dash up front or if you want Trump is a meanie up front. You guys put that in the chat. And while we do that and think about it, I'll give you that moment to ponder, run the Jeopardy music. We're going to say thanks to my friends over at Patriot Coolers, who are a sponsor of today's show. They are a sponsor of many of our shows, and they have been with us since the beginning, since February of 2023. I was talking to Matt Strickland, who did our Sunday special the other day. I said, do you realize that I launched this whole operation here, which is, it's small but mighty. And we launched it out of a trailer on a freaking extension cord. And the first sponsor that jumped on board was Patriot Coolers, and I'm super grateful that they've been with us since the beginning, and I will recommend them to you. You will not be going wrong if you choose any of their products, if you're in the market for them. And they wouldn't want you to spend money you don't have anyway. So there you go. Today's Patriot Cooler on the desk is this very classy looking wood grain. I didn't understand the lure of it. And then I saw somebody with it. It might have been my mother. Somebody bought it in my presence. And then I went, I want one too. And so I have one now in this wood grained office, in this wood grain desk. I have a wood grain cup. That is the 20 ounce. It is the perfect size with a great little top. PatriotCoolers.com is the website. Promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. I don't know if they'll do a laser etching engraving on that one, but they might. And the only way to find out is by going through and checking out our little private collection. You guys can also customize anything out there. If you're looking to get your custom logo and you're a conservative oriented thing, if you're a Second Amendment type person, you want something laser etched on there in bulk, by all means, let me know. You can reach out at info@KyleSeraphin.com. I will put you in touch with Marcus and the product managers over there, and they will get you hooked up, and you will not get canceled like you might over at the Yeti folks, and so on. All right. That's what we're going to do. Let's dive into today's program. So I'm looking over in the chat, and this is what I see. You guys have zero consensus. There's a fair number of dash me outside first. I think that's where we're at. Dash is more of a salad than a dessert. But let's do the bighorn first. I think we're going to start in the order that I originally thought it was going to be. And so we'll do a little bit of news headlines up front. You guys, you had no consensus. We should figure out how to do like a poll or something. All right, let's start with this. The uncomfortable truth about Democrats and their problems reaching male voters. I don't know who this man is. That kind of looks like Beto O'Rourke, but I'm not sure that it is. I just typed in Democrat men, and I got this handsome specimen there. He looks like he benches the bar plus potentially a couple of the 2.5s. Real tough guy. So the question is, what are Democrats focusing on? I had a clip for you yesterday from Michael Knowles. I don't think this is actually a win because our side is also full of problematic people. And we're going to hit those quite a bit. The numbers are telling a sobering tale, so saith MSNBC, which is fixated on the navel gazing. The New York Times recorded that the Democrats plan to reach donors. They're trying to get a $20 million strategic plan together with guys like David Hogg, who was just caught on a pretty interesting little Project Veritas video. I don't generally like the undercover sit-down sting operation videos just because I don't think you're getting people at their honest space. But when you talk to someone that's in the media and is out there in the public sphere, like a David Hogg, who is doing this every single day, if you were to catch me off guard and come and have my comments, quote unquote, off the record, they would be my real comments because I know that I could be filmed or I could be taken out of context at any moment. When I speak to people, I say things that I think are true. I think David Hogg is the same. He's in that category of people you can approach. He's not like some random government guy that's out on a date with a woman that's too pretty for him. In any case, so this is something they want to speak to American men, a $20 million plan that is going to involve studying the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in male spaces. I think they're going to do a great job with that. I think it's going to be awesome. And in order to sort of get a good comment on that, I went to some other masculine people, including Debbie Wasserman Schultz, aka Ramen Noodlehead. Here she is talking on CNN about the path forward and getting men to like women who just berate men. It's not a big market, it turns out. Like regular guys don't particularly care for this, but here they are giving it a chat. And as I said, we're going to continue to not celebrate it, but we should at least know what they're talking about.
Our friends over at the New York Times are doing a series periodically looking into the Democratic Party and the challenges facing the Democrats as you try to run into the next election with some kind of momentum. Shane Goldmacher, among others, is doing this research, and he talks about it in an article over the weekend, a focus group led by a longtime Democratic researcher who asked some 250 people to describe or compare each party to an animal. And I want to read you what this found. Republicans are seen as apex predators like lions, tigers, and sharks, beasts that take what they want when they want it. Democrats are typically tagged as tortoises, slugs, or sloths, slow, plodding, passive. And then a little bit later, there was a respondee who said the Democrats are like a deer in headlights. How is it that you think that the Democratic Party has earned these descriptions?
John, I'm not focused on the animals that some New York Times reporter compares the political parties to. My constituents are human beings, and the human beings that I represent are facing devastating healthcare cuts, the most significant healthcare cuts that have been ever handed down by any administration. Almost 14 million people will lose their Medicaid coverage. Many hundreds of thousands more.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Are the medical experiments that are going on and the coverage that we are losing, are they mostly women who are losing access to it, or is it mostly men pretending to be women? Is it women that have pretended to be men and now are men with babies? You could see why this would be confusing. This is one of those sort of like great little highlights we could run back and play when Josh Hawley was asking a woman with a nose ring who is a teacher and doesn't seem to have a grasp of, like, I don't know, the basic physiology, which my kids do at the age of 5.
Make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing that.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important.
Because of my line of questioning?
Because,
so we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist.
I'm denying that trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can get pregnant.
So you are denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you?
Absolutely.
Or are they also treated like this, where
No,
they're told that they're opening up people to violence?
We have a good time in my class. You should join.
I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot just in this exchange.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
Yep.
Ms. Matsky, let me ask you something.
It's so bad. Can you imagine thinking that was the victory? Because she did. She walked out there and she was like, nailed it, crushed him, white man down. Like, what a awful situation. Put your kids in homeschooling. Honestly, like you can't. How many of those are out there that are just sneaking around? And I bet you she's really sweet, like sickly sweet to people, to their faces, and then goes and drops all that crazy into people's heads. It's kind of incredible to believe that person, and by the way, I almost think she slipped at one point in time when she said something about men being pregnant. Anyway, I don't think they can actually follow their own crazy, but you know, that kind of person doesn't belong in charge of your kids, and only you can make that vote. So again, take things in-house, take responsibility. That's the American thing to do. Don't rely on the government. It's real simple. We have the same rule here. Or you could rely on the government and you could be really upset that some 4-year-old girl who came here illegally with her mother who came here illegally, but they've been here. I mean, you meanies, they've been here since 2023. If they get deported, she could die because medical treatments in the United States are the only thing keeping her alive. It's this strange argument that, how many is the right number? How many people should we let everyone in? Does everyone have to come here? They always want to prove it by the exception, do they not? So this is ABC proving that Trump is a meanie. There's a couple of other examples of it. It's a 4-year-old girl. She needs life-saving medical treatment. No further information given. She could die within days if she is deported, according to the family's lawyers. The child is only identified by not her actual name, Sophia. So they just made up a name, and she suffers from short bowel syndrome, which prevents her from being properly able to absorb nutrients and fluid from her own foods. They're using a pseudonym so that she can be protected, but they have a picture of her so that she can be protected for her privacy. That's what's most important. She started getting medical treatment at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. There are all kinds of interesting little ways that we can save people and we can bring people into this country, and they do it all the time. They bring people in from Egypt and Africa, and they do experimental medical treatments on them that they wouldn't be able to get in their home countries, and they save lives. And I think that's fantastic. That's what America should do because it's a Christian nation that looks forward and says we want to help the least of these. And at the same time, you cannot prove the rule by pointing out to us an exception. This is someone who might actually deserve what's called humanitarian parole, where you bring someone in from another country and you give them access to things in this country because we have such a great wealth and capability, and maybe we can keep a child alive. And I think there's a nobility in that. That doesn't mean that everybody should stay alive and stay in this country. And it doesn't mean that some drunken Venezuelan who smashed somebody in the head and killed some like promising young American with a jet ski should stay here. But this is kind of the argument that's always made. It's this crazy idea that we're going to go and find the absolute most fringe of the margins, and we are going to try to prove the rule, which is illogical and doesn't stand on its own weight, with one exception to the rule, which is so narrow as to be statistically irrelevant. The number of children that have come here that need experimental medical treatment and would die if deported within days is that many. It's the number on the screen. It's 1 right now, right? So they go and they highlight these stories, and suddenly they care about children, right? And at the same time, if you guys flip through your feeds on various different social medias, you'll see friends like Abolitionist Rising doing interventions on the street and asking people questions. And the argument is that if somebody is too expensive, like it's really expensive to have a child, that you shouldn't have to bring them into a life when you don't have money. So the same people that would argue for killing this girl in the womb, who would argue that she should never be brought into existence and never be allowed to walk foot on this planet, now that she's alive, and she also happens to be one of the preferred groups, she should stay around. And that to me is really, really ugly. Another little celebration here of Donald Trump as a big meanie head is that Donald Trump did tariffs, and now a court has ruled that they're most likely illegal. This is coming from CBS. We just kind of hit the high points of, we did MSNBC, ABC, this is CBS. His tariff actions were allegedly illegal. This is written as of this morning. Federal court froze most of the sweeping tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump on virtually every foreign nation, ruling the levies exceeded the president's legal authority. The ruling was issued by a panel of judges on the U.S. Court of International Trade, which most of us have never heard of and didn't know existed until just now. And they halted the sweeping 10% tariffs that he assessed on virtually every U.S. trading partner on Liberation Day last month, with higher tariffs threatened for dozens of other countries. The court also blocked a separate set of tariffs imposed on China and Mexico and Canada, which cited drug trafficking and illegal immigration as the reasoning for those hikes. The global markets loved it, and so they rallied. They justified the original trade, and the argument being made in the court was that they had the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 gave the president the power to regulate imports during certain emergency situations. This didn't stop these same people from agreeing that they could do all kinds of illicit and immoral and illegal things under COVID. The tyranny was fine. We could shut down the entire United States economy. I keep watching all these little throwbacks to the COVID memories that we had, and it's like, yeah, they only care about the rules when they care about the rules, when it favors what they're interested in. But Donald Trump's a big meathead, so we got to shut down his tariffs, and we can't do it. In addition to being mean about kicking out little girls from this country who came here illegally, and they've been here since 2023, which I think, I'm trying to remember, I think that's the same time that my daughter was born in this country. So yeah, like my baby has been in this country as the same amount of time, except was actually from here. In addition to people need to be thrown out, and that's mean. Tariffs are mean because we love China and Canada and Mexico, apparently. We also need to highlight what will happen when we defund the Ivy League. Defunding the Ivy League is incredibly mean because it is going to stop 350 medical grants that were going to solve all of our world's problems, like cancer. It was going to go after and fix all the issues. They were studying biotic resistance. They were identifying early precursors for breast cancer. They were breaking down barriers to deliver effective Alzheimer medication and studying microbial evolution, researching cures for ALS. And now, because the Trump administration is so mean, that will not happen. We will be unable to have these moments where we're always going to be able to put the brightest and the smartest minds in place to solve all of our problems. And isn't that criminal? The thing is that they don't seem to highlight the actual reason and what was actually going on here. And the idea that they're going to shut down foreign students is also problematic, apparently, because our media outlets do nothing if not cover for not Americans. Let's give you a little list here of some of the evil things that they have shut down. They were inspired to find a cure. This person, someone Sinclair, Dr. Sinclair, was going to find a cure to ALS, but is now not going to be able to. His partner's mother, of course, his partner's mother. I'll just leave it at that with no further information. We watched his mom descend from an active and healthy lady in her 70s to now where she's on a breathing machine. You know, a lot of people for most of humankind have died 70, 80 years old. That's kind of like a thing. Turns out, towards the end of life, people end up having a lot of problems and things catch up with them. Their biology doesn't. In fact, I had a genetics professor once tell me at Texas State University, he said the probability of you ending up with cancer on an infinite lifeline, if you were to live from now until never die, you would get cancer. The probability is 1 out of 1. It would happen because our body breaks down. It stops doing the things it's supposed to doing. You start having all kinds of flaws in the replication process, and eventually you end up with cancer of some format. It's 100% probability on a long enough timeline if something else doesn't kill you first. That's just like the way it works, right? I mean, I guess this is another sort of aspect of being a Christian. You're supposed to know that this life is not forever. And for all those people that are secular humanists and out there trying to extend it indefinitely, and that's all great, and I want to see people live as long as possible and healthy lives, nobody gets out of life alive, including Jeffrey Epstein, which we'll talk about in just a moment. All of these things are to say they're really mean, or are they? Let's do a little quick grab here and take a look at Mike Rowe talking about Harvard, because I had this clip queued up for yesterday, and I had to drop it. I didn't have time. So now we're going to throw it on the screen here. Listen to my favorite voice in media, period, talking about maybe we don't worry about putting money into universities that have $50-something billion in endowment. Maybe they can like stand on their own 2 feet, and we could find better uses of our dollars that would serve more people than just super elite Ivy League people that are pushing this agenda, which turns out to be kind of anti-American.
The Ivy League, I'm sorry to say, has beclowned themselves in recent months, and Harvard has led the beclowning. Part of what I love about the president's post is the fact that it's going to force conversations like this one. And a lot of taxpayers, Chris, for the first time, are going to realize that the Harvard Corporation is sitting on a $54 billion endowment. Their president is currently screaming that this post and the idea that they could lose their tax-exempt status and some of these grants and tax money, the idea that that could happen are, in his words, unconstitutional. Now, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I think he's mistaken. And I think that the optics here are terrible. And the first shoe to drop is going to be a gobsmacking realization on the part of a lot of regular Americans that this university is already sitting on $54 billion. What the actual hell does that even mean? So get past that and then ask yourself, well, why then would you want to give all that money to another bunch of schools? There's nothing magical about trade schools. I love them, but they're great ones and okay ones and some that fall below, right? So what we need as a people, as taxpayers, is some kind of means testing. You can't just give money to schools any more than you can give it to any random person because they need it or want it or have dreamt of it. So really, if you got $3 billion to close the skills gap, set aside a big chunk for a national scholarship program. Carve away a little bit of that to build an infrastructure that can evaluate the individuals on their merit, right? And then carve away a bigger chunk to start telling the stories and making a more persuasive case for the 7.6 million open jobs that exist right now, most of which don't require a 4-year degree.
And that is the big key. There are a huge number of jobs that don't require it. We were all kind of sold a bill of goods. Anybody who grew up about the time that I did, if you grew up and you were a teenager, let's say in the 80s or in the 90s, and certainly those who came after us, you basically were told if you didn't go to college, your life was screwed, that you would not have any success. You would be living at the poverty level and you wouldn't be able to ever be accomplished in what America sort of means. And yet, it turns out there's a ton of money in the trades and there's a ton of money in hard and tangible skills. And you can make a really good living as a plumber or a mechanic or as a carpenter or a finished carpenter, or you could do it as a painter. I have friends that said I was out there and I was looking for a job and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I launched a lawn business because I didn't have really any alternative. And it turns out that it pays better than my last job, which was white collar and involved working in an office. And you know what? It's also more satisfying. And there's the possibility of hiring more people and growing a business and working with tangible things and having machines and loud noises and being outdoors and all the health benefits that come from it. The joke is, and I think that this is maybe an expression that I got from my father, but you know, if it came down to it, I would dig ditches. I've dug a lot of ditches in my life and I'm not afraid of digging ditches and I don't mind. And actually that wouldn't be an awful thing to do. I don't do as well in the heat anymore. Maybe I can find somewhere cold to dig ditches, but I've dug ditches for people just for fun because they needed some help, including people who were elderly, neighbors of my in-laws. I went up and I remember seeing one of their neighbors. He was digging a ditch to bury a gas line. And I was like, let me jump in on this. Why don't you tell me stories about things? Because he was in his 80s and he had some really great stories. You tell me stories about living on this mountain and I'm going to put some dirt on the ground next to me. We're going to make a hole and we're going to put this thing underground. We're going to dig it deep enough that it doesn't freeze. It's very satisfying. So Mike Rowe's onto something there as usual. What is also going on is the crying about foreign students. Again, our news media loves to cover things that are not American. Let me do that real quickly here. The Trump administration will now aggressively revoke Chinese student visas in a major escalation with Beijing. My buddy sent me this story this morning. He's an FBI agent. He went to the academy with me. And one of the funny things that we did, because we realized what was going on, in 2016, the two of us took a drive to Washington, D.C. We drove past the Chinese embassy and yelled something to the effect of, "Get out of our country, you're all spies." True story, silly. That just tells you how serious I was about being at the FBI Academy. We didn't do a lot of silly things, but this guy and I did at least a few things like that. Because we realized, what did he call them? Spy McSpyface? Something to that effect? The Chinese people that come into this country from the People's Republic of China that roll in here and have to answer to the CCP are in fact required to report back to them. There's all kinds of like evidence of this in their laws. This is well known within the intelligence community. So letting students in, they are maybe here for their own volition. Maybe they're here to benefit themselves. They obviously all pay full tuition. And for that full tuition, they get access to all kinds of things, including things like our supercomputers. They get access to our public universities. They get access to positions of public trust. They sometimes get access to teach as grad students. And they may just take casual side trips to like some sort of interesting little, military base that happens to be nowhere near them. Like they might live in, let's say, Maryland or Maine. And then we find out that they're in Colorado trying to take pictures of the United States Air Force Academy security. This stuff happens all the time. So the Trump administration aggressively revoking Chinese student visas seems like a totally reasonable thing to do. The Chinese would have zero qualms with doing it. And by the way, their media wouldn't cover it in any meaningful way, at least not in a way that said that they were doing a bad thing. They would say that they stand up to to Americans, which is great. So we should actually mirror that. That is the right thing, in the same way that escalating things like tariffs and getting fair trade. It's like, look, if you guys want to be in this world where you're going to be aggressive, the United States should answer in kind. So I'm 100% behind that. I see all of you guys that are watching over there on Rumble. Thanks so much for being there. Will you please hit the like button if you're listening or if you're watching after the fact? We'd really appreciate that. If you're watching over on YouTube, and yes, I see that we are growing every morning. We have more of you showing up on the YouTube side. Very appreciative of you doing that. YouTube.com/@KyleSeraphin. Give me a like over there. If you're watching on X, same deal. You could just hit the little heart down there. If you're watching on Locals, jump on one of the other two. The chat's way better. But we do appreciate you guys over on Locals. It's KyleSeraphin.com. That's where I end up posting all the links to these stories so you guys can read the stories for yourself if you want more details. And lastly, if you want to share the show with a friend, it's on Spotify. The easiest way to do it. It's better, I think, than iHeartRadio. It's better than Apple and so on. All you got to do is go to KyleSeraphinShow.com. We're going to do a quick sponsor read, and then I'm going to get into the aforementioned Dash Bongino game, because we're going to need some time with this one, and it is a lot of fun. So we will do that right after we say thanks to the folks over at Blackout Coffee. I brought up one friend in the FBI this morning who told me about Spy McSpyface. Another one asked me maybe a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, hey, what coffee brand are you advertising with? And I said, I use Blackout Coffee. Again, it's blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. We've been telling you about these guys for a little while. Of course, some of my friends now also listen to the podcast intermittently when they're not doing work. That's pretty cool. He said, I'm going to order some up and see what it's about. So he sent me a picture of his order, and he got some flavored ones, full disclosure, which I made fun of him endlessly about. But he said, man, this thing really is good. He's like, there is some really good stuff coming out of there. And he took my advice and got the pitch black, which is the espresso. What is it? Pitch black espresso, dark roast. I have it over my shoulder here so I can refer to my cheat sheet. I buy it in the 5-pound bag. It takes me about 7 weeks in our family, and we drink at least 2 liters of coffee a day. So if you guys are in that, adjust accordingly. You can order, and that's the strength that we like it at, which is pretty dark. Check it out. Again, blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. You'll save 20% on your first order. You're keeping the American dream alive with a real coffee company that likes what you guys are about. They're about hard work and American values. They're making a good cup of coffee, and that's the minimum standard, but it smells amazing. It's like it feels good to receive them. I don't know. Sometimes I get stuff in the mail and I'm like, oh, this. And then sometimes I get something and I'm like, I'm going to very much enjoy this. And Blackout Coffee is one of those things. I think we actually turned my parents onto it as well. Check them out. They're not just a great cup of coffee. They're an American company that does things the right way. They've been growing it the same way. We referenced the trailer here. Same deal. They're working out of a much bigger warehouse. They started off in a garage, and they're running it out there. Blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Support our friends. Support this company. And for some reason, I like the B-roll footage on the side here that shows them making the cup of coffee, because when I do grind coffee and I do boil it up, I actually really like it. They use a steel French press in the same way that we do in our house. Little quick story on that one. We used to have a glass one when my wife and I first got married. And what I realized is that my most stumbly, mumbly, unaware, inarticulate movement moments are first thing in the morning, and grabbing a piece of tempered glass that's quite thin and walking around with it in like some little plastic holster is the worst possibility, because we had granite countertops. Many of you probably have the same, stone, granite, whatever. You turn around and you just you're making these gross muscle movements that are totally incompetent, and you smash glass into stone. Eventually you're going to just have glass all over the floor, and you're going to be tired. So then you're going to have glass in your feet, and you're going to bleed all over the floor, and that creates a new mess. That's not what you're trying to do. All right. One last little quick story here, and I think it's worth mentioning. Elon Musk officially is leaving the White House. They got this cool guy picture of him wearing some sunglasses and a leather jacket. He's an interesting dude, is he not? He apparently is very disappointed with what happened in Congress. Like many of us, they're still hashing out the details over in the Senate, but he said that the bill to fund Trump's agenda is very disappointing. They did not codify the Doge cuts. The whole point that he went there and gave up some of his time as a volunteer to go in and try to save some money didn't work, which is obvious. We are living in a place of permanent swamp, and that's just the nature of how things go. I'm going to give you kind of another picture of it. We're going to do a fair trade here. This is going to work our way into sort of the Dash Bongino piece. This picture popped up on my social media feed. So if you guys are just listening 30 minutes in, it's about 29 minutes into the show right now. That's Ed Martin and some other dude that I don't know, but apparently he's the great something or other. And then there's Julie Kelly, also sometimes known as the great Julie Kelly, standing right next to him. it kind of tells you a lot about how things go down. You can have all the best people in there, but if they're surrounded by folks that have nefarious ideas or are dishonest, or they're working against while pretending to be with, it's really hard to imagine us getting anything accomplished. Now, in all fairness, Ed Martin continues to say the right things. He's saying things in the right way. I don't say hope in man, but I believe that he's not lying. I'm just watching him. His body language is genuine. His articulation seems like he's not straining. He's not trying to like work against his own physiology here. So maybe, just maybe, he's just got some people that we don't like, I think are bad actors. He's out there trying to get weaponization under control, particularly because he understands that there are three prongs. This is a longer clip. This is from the Alex Marlow show, which I'm not familiar with, but I found it. One, the best part of it is the absolutely disgusting office that he works out of in Washington, D.C. It's exactly what I imagine every government bureaucrat working in. It's crappy mismatched furniture. It's lousy ceiling tiles that probably have like black mold somewhere where there's a leaky faucet or a leaky fire sprinkler, and kind of like mediocre looking doors from the 70s. This is a perfect clip of what it looks like to work in government. It is not prestigious, and it does sound like Ed Martin is saying the right things. As long as he does those right things, we're going to be in great shape. I just get a little bit nervous when I see silly pictures like this and people celebrating it. All right, here's the clip of Ed Martin saying what we hope will happen, including for some J6ers and some whistleblowers.
When Donald Trump was elected, his first day, he had an executive order saying, get weaponization out of government. When Attorney General Bondi was confirmed, she put a memorandum out on day one saying, I'm starting a weaponization working group. I want you to look at Fannie Willis and Jack Smith and Alvin Bragg. I want you to look at targeting school board parents, Catholics. I want you to look at the whistleblowers who were targeted. Long list, actually, about 8 categories. And then beyond that, we started meeting right away. I was a member of it. And beyond that, actually, was other aspects of things. Like I've worked with Bobby Kennedy on COVID. Did they weaponize? How did they weaponize the COVID stuff against the citizens? And so there's categories all across government getting to the bottom of, and 3 steps, Alex. One is tell the truth. We deserve the truth. We need to know what happened, who did it, and why. If you have to name and shame, we're going to name and shame. Some of these people don't have shame, but we're going to name and shame them. Number 2 is, where possible, hold them accountable. Criminally, if they lose their jobs, take away their the grants to their universities, whatever it is, make sure that we have accountability. So tell the truth, hold them accountable. And the third thing, Alex, which this made Tillis a little nervous. He's like, you're for reparations. I said, I'm not for reparations. I am for restitution.
He goes on and explains a little bit further, and I think he's exactly right. There has to be some recompense for people that spent time in prison that didn't belong there, that couldn't have access to exculpatory information. For whistleblowers, like my friend Garrett O'Boyle, who's coming up on 1,000 days without a paycheck. I look back at my own story, and although we've landed on our feet, and I'm really grateful for all of you that come here and listen every morning, it's not awesome. Like we were just discussing it. That's why we have multiple lawsuits. We actually can prove that they violated the law. We have a new lawsuit that should file shortly on behalf, like Elon Musk's people actually approached me and said they wanted to file a lawsuit because our First Amendment was actually violated. The FBI cited my social media as grounds for termination after they hadn't paid me in 14 months and pretended like I somehow still worked there when I had gone out on my own and tried to do stuff. So Ed Martin gets it, from what I can tell. Like that little 2 minutes right there says all the things in the right way. And he has the plan, right? You take money away from the grants, you take money away from students, you take money away from the different sort of contracts that are being funded. You have to de-weaponize things. That all makes perfect sense. Last little example of weaponization is something that is coming out now because Tulsi Gabbard has been declassifying this stuff, and they're covering it over at Public with Michael Schellenberger and Catherine Herridge and so on. The fact of the matter is that this is stuff that we told you about from day one here. I already knew this. And so did you if you've been listening to this show for any period of time. It's not patting ourselves on the back to say that very specifically, they listed those people who decided not to get COVID vaccine shots as DVEs, domestic violent extremists. This was the motivation that brought me forward. It's not because like Kyle Seraphin wanted to have a podcast. That was never on my mind. I didn't want to go on Fox News. I had no interest in going out there and telling the story. What I knew is the agency that I worked for was doing things against the American people's interest and what I believed was in violation of the Constitution. It's very clear that the First Amendment allows you to do all kinds of things. And that's going to get into our first segment with Dash and unfortunately, Director Jim Comey, which I'm going to have to play you. They've made me agree with Jim Comey, who I think is a snake. Like I said, he's a giant middle finger to the American people. But what you have here in this document is saying that if you say things that are not liked, including about COVID, then you were potentially a DVE, a domestic violent extremist. Ed Martin was talking about those things. Those DVEs were people who spoke out against masking mandates, against transgender ideology at school boards, where you're allowed to do that sort of thing. The whole idea is parents are supposed to have some sort of say in how their kids are educated. He also talked about Catholics, radical traditional Catholics, which I exposed to. Like, if you listen to what he said, all of the things that he listed as his like top of mind examples of weaponization, they were exposed by this one guy here. Now, Garrett O'Boyle was involved in that as well. Steve Friend called attention to J6 stuff. Marcus Allen did things like say, hey, we should be fair and look at the facts. But the fact of the matter is the suspendables as a unit, which are all people that used to work at the FBI, came forward in good faith. We're not doing it for political reasons and saying, oh, the Biden administration is really mean, we want Trump. What we said is the FBI is violating your constitutional liberties, and the intelligence community as a whole apparently was involved in that. Tulsi Gabbard put this thing out. I will throw these slides up over on KyleSeraphin.com. They're declassified and released as of April 28th. So this is not breaking news. This is a month old, but it is stuff that's re-hitting the circuit. And what I found out also, for those of you who followed the show since the beginning, Aaron Stevenson, who was a whistleblower that brought things out to James O'Keefe, not a big fan, but he did the right thing. Aaron is great. James is not. They immediately ignored Aaron's story, by the way. And Aaron is one of the only people that I met through the Project Veritas stuff that I still keep in touch with because he just does it for the right reasons. He said he actually brought this stuff forward when it happened. This is from 13 December 2021. Interestingly enough, that's 2 days after the FBI denied my religious accommodation request to not wear a mask and not do a test every single 72 hours because I thought that was like Nazi level discrimination. How interesting, right? Like all these things end up going back to COVID. Okay, I told you I don't want you to make me agree with Jim Comey, but unfortunately people are going to do that. So here we go. This is the clip. This is going to be referenced in several other clips. Dan Bongino went on Fox and Friends this morning, so I grabbed a little quick, pretty relevant clip from this as well. Here's the former director of the FBI, the man who handed my credentials to me and stood 7 feet tall over my family. All right. And he's saying things that are actually true. I'm actually agreeing with what he has to say. First of all, it must be a very difficult transition from podcast host to deputy director of the FBI when you've never worked in the FBI. He also says, I don't know what the FBI's responsibility is in investigating things. And those are all true. I ran this by all the suspendables. None of us have any love for Jim Comey. None. We have no love for this man. And he's not wrong. So we're going to cut fair. I hate that people are making me do this. This is him on CNN with Wolf Blitzer.
Something supported by a lot of conservatives out there. What do you make of this?
It's a little confusing to me, honestly. I'm sure it's a huge adjustment to go from being a podcaster to being the deputy director of the FBI, but I don't understand this tweet. First of all, I assume that the investigation of the pipe bomb that was found on January 6th was never closed. The FBI never closes such a thing, so I guess it means they're going to focus on it more. And as to the other things, I thought the Supreme Court marshal had investigated the leak of the opinion, the draft opinion. I don't know what the FBI's role is there. Cocaine at the White House, I thought the Secret Service investigated that, so I don't follow it and understand it. I also don't understand who the audience is for this tweet. The FBI often calls for public assistance or in matters of great public concern will announce an investigation to reassure the public. This seems much more narrowly targeted, maybe to a former podcast audience.
He's not wrong, by the way. And the crazy thing and the saddest thing is that my friends inside the Bureau are reaching out to me and telling me things like, we're being run by social media right now. Social media opinion is directing what Dan and Kash do. If you guys don't think so, if you're not on X, you're missing out on watching them respond to sort of like the right-wing Twitter mob in what they have to say. I'm not kidding. And you can tell that they are totally obsessed with what that messaging looks like by what Dan has to say. If you're the deputy director of the FBI, do you really need to sit there? This is not a podcast moment. You don't need to sit there and talk about the former guy. Jim Comey should be irrelevant to you. You should be doing your mission set. And by the way, deputy directors have never gone on Fox News ever. So we're dealing with a media focus, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's great or not. We're dealing with a media focused FBI that has never existed in the same way. You've never seen Paul Abate go out there and spend time. You never saw David Bowditch on media. He didn't go out and do interviews with people. That's not what the deputy does. The deputy goes out there and runs the FBI. Apparently, we've got Dan Bongino taking time away to go to Fox and Friends. And he doesn't say anything, by the way. He didn't drop any information on you. He just sort of makes some like loose allegations and says the things that you'd expect podcast Dan to say. but kind of in like a gentle way. Here we go.
I got to tell you, of all the things that have surprised me in the close to now 3 months I've been here is the depravity of Jim Comey. This man is a disgrace to the badge, the FBI, and the country. What he's doing right now, one, going out and taking shots at Kash. Kash doesn't belong. Kash was the chief of staff at the Department of. Kash is a patriot. Kash has served in numerous high-level roles, taking personal shots while you're on the beach, implying a threat towards the president and blaming your wife about it. And let me just add about James Comey, Saint Comey, who walks around there moralizing to everyone how wonderful of a human being he is. What you said is absolutely accurate. We have wasted countless man hours now running out tips to our tip line about people putting 8647 because of Jim Comey, because he.
Nobody should be investigating that at all. It's not a threat, people. It's constitutionally protected. We did an entire show on it. A lot of you guys disagreed with that, by the way. It doesn't really matter if you agree with it because the Supreme Court already did that. And by the way, that's Secret Service's job. If there is a threat to the president, which there isn't, by people putting something out there, do you want like Jack Posobiec investigated because he did the same thing about Biden? No, that's not a threat. Is Jim Comey a scumbag for saying those things? Yes. Is he looking to sell books? Is he getting credibility where he needs to? Yes. Is he getting those effeminate guys that we showed you at the beginning? Like this guy. Is this guy going to go buy Jim Comey's book? Probably, whoever that guy is. I'm sorry for that guy. Maybe he's a really nice man, but I don't know who he is. The fact is they're just belaboring these things because where's the real answers? None. What you just heard there is he tried to pump up Kash Patel, and he said that we're wasting a bunch of time on something that is not a priority. That's not what any of you voted for. Nobody said go and bother Jim Comey and people who post pictures of shells. That's not what we wanted. And they spent significant amounts of times in both of these interviews covering down on that. On a 15-minute hit, if you spend 2 to 3 minutes on this, you are trying to distract us. These guys are getting to be like mediocre masters of the laser pointer. What should really be done? Correction of the agency? A fixing of the problem? How about actually prosecutions of bad people? How about laying off or suspending the clearance like they've done to Garrett O'Boyle of the people that shouldn't be there? No, we just found out that Spencer Evans, who removed me, has been promoted to headquarters. He's going to go to where he can do the most damage. We think it's going to be at the security division. He's going to go and do more damage and handle the background investigations of and the internal investigations of people in the FBI, the so-called FBI Stasi. Are you kidding me? And you promoted Steve Jensen. Here's Kash Patel saying the same thing. We worked and we pulled agents off real cases to investigate Jim Comey copycats. You must be out of your flipping minds if you think this sells. And I don't know who it's selling to. Because if you think that people who post pictures of shells, if that distracts you from going after child sex traffickers, you might be the problem. And I'm going to show you that I still think that they are because they're not getting it done.
James Comey. If he wants to come after me, no problem. I've been living rent-free in that guy's head for years, and that's just a bonus. Do you know how many copycats we've had to investigate as a result of that beachside venture from the former director?
Is that right?
Do you know how many agents I've had to take offline from chasing down child sex predators, fentanyl traffickers, terrorists, because everywhere across this country, people are popping up on social media and think that a threat to the life of the President of the United States is a joke and they can do it because he did it? That's what I'm having to deal with every single day. And that's what I'm having to pull my agents and analysts off because he thought it was funny to go out there and make a political statement.
The 80s.
You just said it was a political statement because it was a political statement, Kash. You're just undermining the reason. You don't get to investigate people for political statements. That's the whole point of why Ed Martin is supposed to be doing what he's doing. People can hold up a severed head of Donald Trump, and it is in terrible taste. And I hope they never get a job again because they've destroyed their brand and their reputation, like Kathy Griffin did. You can go out and say stupid things about when was the last time an actor took out a president, like Johnny Depp did. And you hope that those people don't get work and people don't go see their movies because nobody cares what Johnny Depp thinks about politics. But they're allowed to have an opinion in America. In fact, the ugliest and nastiest opinions are supposed to be allowed in this country. We're supposed to be able to debate them. You're allowed to be a white supremacist, folks. You can be an a-hole and not have the FBI crawl up your butt and come knock on your door. And the Supreme Court agreed. 1969, the Watts decision. Go read it. Watts v. USA. That's number one. And the other one is the Counterman v. Colorado. The threats have to be persistent and regular and actually have a possibility of being carried out. Give me a break. How about the Epstein files? How about that? That's something we all agreed on. Everyone thought that people should get the Epstein files. They're on my desk. The Epstein files are on my desk. So saith Pam Bondi. We found truckloads of them. So saith Kash Patel. People are going to see it. You ready? Here's the Epstein situation.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria. You said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
The other thing on the internet is the Epstein files. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is the same as everything else. I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever, but I'm also not going to rush to get it out there in a format in which they can't rely on it. So on the Epstein matter or any other matters, we are diligently working on that, and it takes time to go through years of investigations, years of political maneuvering, and years of cover-up to get the American people what they deserve. And that's what I'm going to give them on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh, no. How about we get the real answer? The real answer actually comes from Julie Kelly. We played it to you yesterday. I played it late in the show. Let's play it again. Here it is. This is the real answer from the unofficial press secretary of Kash and Dan.
I also don't care about the Epstein information. I don't care about those files. I think it's irrelevant. I don't care about those files. I think it's irrelevant. I think it's irrelevant. No one is going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. No one is going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. And I would much rather dig into January 6th. Much rather dig into.
Like that. You've got to get. No.
No, says Steve Bannon. Right? No one's going to be charged. Everyone got away with it. They're irrelevant. You don't get to decide. Dan Bongino is talking about boxes of files that they found in hidden rooms in the Hoover building. I can't even believe that this stuff is out there. Like, I assume that you put it on a boomer audience to go out there and hope that people think that the FBI deals in boxes of files. Are you kidding me? Like, what would that even be? Files are in the computer. This is Zoolander stuff. The files are kept in the computer. That's where you keep your case files. Now, you can hide them from people, and you can make them restricted, and you can get limited access. There's all kinds of things, sub rosa programs, I'm sure. I don't know if the FBI has them, but they might. I wouldn't be privy to that. Why are these guys going out and gaslighting you and telling you that there's boxes of files we found and people pulled us aside and said we want to help you out? Those people who wanted to help Dan and Kash out, those were the snakes. I'm sure of it. Why would you trust anybody in an agency that you've said is completely weaponized and was run by Jim Comey and were hired by Jim Comey? The people that are in the building right now at headquarters have been in the FBI for, let's say, 10 years on average. Who was the director in 2015? Oh, it was Jim Comey. It's the guy that you just called like this atrocious person. He hired all these people, dude. Here's Dan Bongino trying to make some allegations about hidden files.
Do you read the stuff that's coming out?
Does he still have loyalists in the building? Because when I hear the FBI director saying, you guys are finding boxes that are hidden, okay, how does that happen in the Bureau?
Well, we were there a couple of weeks, and luckily there were a lot of people up there who grabbed us by the arm the minute we came in and said, thank you for being here. You know, we need to talk. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not. We literally can't do it. Once that gets done and that gets out there and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly, you're going to be stunned.
The shells. Like what? Somebody was doing it on a typewriter? It wasn't in a computer? What are you talking about, dude? I don't believe anything you just said. And someone took you there and showed you the hidden room. It wasn't hidden, but it wasn't told to us. How would you know what was normal and what was not normal? You just showed up at the FBI a few days ago. That's the whole point. You got people that come in and start whispering in your ear. Why would you trust them? You shouldn't. I'll show you who's running the FBI, and it's so freaking obvious. This is what's going on. You want to know who runs the FBI? It's the people who have been at the FBI, who have always been running the FBI. I'm going to give you a really clean and easy way to see it. When you're in trouble and you're not doing a good job and the American people are looking at you and saying you're weaponized, you're not doing what we asked for, you're violating the Constitution, your priorities are all misaligned, You can always go back and say, I don't care how many people are poisoned at my restaurant. My recruiting numbers for waiters are up. Recruiting numbers is a longtime refuge of the embattled FBI director. When you're under fire from the outside, you go to recruiting numbers. Shocker. The FBI still does have a historical sort of legacy that it lives behind, and people still do want to make up to $191,000 a year for one of the better jobs. I never once hated going into my job, even when I got called in at weird hours. I didn't ever hate it. It was always cool. Right up until it wasn't. Here's Chris Wray. You remember him? He was the guy after Comey. Chris Wray leaning on the one thing we can always recruit. I think he's talking to Eli Crane here.
Sir, do you find it interesting how many whistleblowers there are right now from your organization coming forward and testifying to Congress about the conduct of the FBI and how they no longer even want to work for the FBI? They're willing to risk everything, including their livelihood, to come and talk to Congress about what they perceive to be a change in the culture at the FBI.
Certainly, I respect the role of whistleblowers in our system. It's an important part of the way our system of government works. When it comes to the culture of the FBI, I'm very proud of our 38,000 people. I think you will be relieved to know that the number of people applying to be special agents from the state of Arizona has gone up over 135% over the last 5 years. And the view that you've just described, I don't think matches what I hear from the 55 plus chiefs and sheriffs and other agency heads in the state of Arizona who.
We just love how many people are applying to our jobs, okay? Chris Wray leaned on it. Did he lean on it other times? Yeah, of course he did. Here he is in 2019. This is before he was first embattled. He's just touting how many recruits they get. They got a lot of recruits, people. It's so good to know that people want to be in the FBI. We're back, baby, 2019.
You know that since October, our special agent recruiting, we have more special agent applicants since October than we had all of the prior year, which shows a significant uptick in the enthusiasm that people have about wanting to dedicate their careers and put their lives on the line working for the FBI. But it's not just agents. You know, we're recruiting computer scientists, data analysts, engineers, the youth of America. We got a thriving economy out there, and we have the highest number of intern applicants out of college that we've ever had. And our selection rate, both for special agents and for interns, is between 5% and 6%, which for those keeping score is more selective than most Ivy League schools. When you can say, like, I get up in the morning to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution, it keeps people coming back. And I will stack our workforce up against anybody, anywhere, any day.
Yay, slow clap. Okay, so when in trouble, go to recruiting. Recruiting numbers are up, and I feel so good about it, and that's how we know who tells people to say this. You think it was Chris Wray's idea, or do you think the same people that are sitting in that building that got hired on by Jim Comey, or before there by Mueller, are still the same people that are driving this train? Here's Kash Patel letting you know. Recruiting is up, folks.
This is where an FBI agent or analyst starts their journey, right?
Absolutely. The first grade facilities that we are trying to dedicate to the men and women who want to join the FBI need some upgrading, as well as the standards that we need them to meet the violent crime. And all of that is engineered right here in Quantico, Virginia. And we're thrilled that you're coming here for a behind the scenes.
Yeah. So applications to be an FBI agent, back in March, it was about 5,600. The last time the Bureau saw monthly figures like this was back in April 2016. But you're seeing big numbers.
We're seeing huge numbers, and I think that's in large part to the administration's response on which way the FBI wants to go. Last year alone, the average for per month application was about 2,500 applicants per month. The first 2 full months of applicants we've had since I've been in the seat, we're at 5,700 applicants a month. So that shows me there's an excitement for the American citizen to join the Bureau.
Oh, yeah. Everybody wants to join the Bureau now because we're back, baby, right? That's what that looks like? What happened to total personnel warfare? What happened to anybody who touched these cases should be gone? Why are we taking Spencer Evans out of Las Vegas, and which is, by the way, that's where Kash Patel's home of record is? Why are we taking the guy who's the SAC out there and moving him to headquarters, moving him to Alabama, getting him a paid move? By the way, everybody makes money on a paid move. They sell their house at the top of the market. The government pays. Hold on. Do you guys know that? When you do a paid federal move as a federal employee, the government pays for your moving company. They pay to move all your household goods. They pay the closing cost on your home. They'll buy your home if nobody else will. And if you sell your home at the top dollar, the government actually gives you a bonus close to $10,000 on top of it for them not having to buy your home. So a government move is almost always a 5-figure bump, sometimes 6 figures if you sell at the right time in the market to be able to move. And I know because I took advantage of that one time. I moved to Las Cruces, New Mexico. We sold at the top of the market. I would have made money either way, but I made more money because I sold while I was working outside of Washington, D.C., and we moved to Las Cruces, New Mexico. I spent less money on a new house, put money back into my pocket that I can invest. And you know what? God's plan is strange. It's one of the reasons why we actually had enough passive income that we were not terrified about having no home and having no job and going up against the FBI. But recruiting numbers are up. You know what else is up? We're going to need a new building. You know, we'd like to go ahead and get a new building for the FBI because they deserve it. He said it before. He dropped that nugget. I'm being told that Kash Patel yesterday was scouting out locations around the Reagan building. So maybe that's the case. Anyway, here he is dropping that they're going to get a new building. Again, who's driving this train? Kash or the FBI drives the director like it always has?
So you want to move out of that building. Where would the new headquarters be?
I can tell you that we are in the process of moving out. We've just worked out the final logistics to begin that process, and we are actually in line with keeping the American taxpayer dollars on mission, shuttering about 6 different offices the FBI has in the D.C. area, and we're moving to our new location within the D.C. area, and that process has already started.
Which is where? Maryland?
We're staying in Washington, D.C., right next to our partners at the Department of Justice, and we're getting out of the Hoover building. I have cargo nets holding up the cement structures of the exterior of the Hoover building because it catches falling cement and prevents it from hitting someone in the head. I'm not making that up. Why no one in the past decided to address that standard or lack of standard and make that building unsafe is beyond me, but we're addressing it.
So
when Donald Trump was...
So you want to move out...
It's unsafe is what we wanted to tell you. It's an unsafe building. It's totally unsafe. That's the reason why, because there's falling debris. They have cargo nets, by the way. Those nets are not big enough to stop anything like a real rock. I've been up there. I always thought they were there in case someone decided to like throw themselves off or they tripped and fell over the railing. It's a really weird structure. Don't get me wrong. It's ugly. It's brutalist architecture, and it's not pretty. But it's unsafe. Again, we played this for you before. This is from the Oversight Project. A little mashup of dudes that ran the FBI, or maybe the FBI ran them, talking about that unsafe building that they can't be in, that nobody else seems to find unsafe because they show up every single day. There are thousands of people that work there, and nobody seems to be unsafe. 0 casualties of FBI employees from being in that building. But it's unsafe. Just ask them.
So what are your colleagues saying about this, that you're going to get out of the Hoover building?
We need a new headquarters very, very badly.
New headquarters proposal that we have.
This FBI is leaving the Hoover building.
He just gave up a big nugget.
We want...
For about a decade now, the FBI has been working on plans to move various functions and headcount to out of the National Capital Region.
If our people are going to be safe...
Because this building is unsafe.
Be effective, and if we're going to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money...
And being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars...
We got to get them all in a modern, safe, efficient FBI headquarters.
We're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that, and that's not this place.
And so there is a big sum asked for in our budget to support that.
We're always going to fight for our personnel and for as much money as we can get.
He just gave up a big nugget.
We want...
It's that big nugget. They love the nugget. I'm just saying, man, you don't say the same words unless someone's putting those words in your mouth. They didn't come up with this stuff. Kash didn't walk in there. He said he wanted to open up a deep state museum. I get that he probably wasn't going to open up a deep state museum. Most of us knew that he wasn't going to shut the building down day one. It was the ethos that goes into it, which is that this is a teardown project. And so the analysis that needed to always be done and should have always been done, it's so simple. The question is this. I walk into the house. I look around. Does this house have good bones, or is there so much structural decay that it needs to be razzed and rebuilt from the ground up? That's the question. Are there 90% of the employees in good standing and doing fine things? Or does the entire FBI Agents Association go out and hire Norm Eisen and Mark Zaid to defend them, people that were involved in the Trump impeachment and have been dealing with like leftist we'll put them in whistleblowers. Have they been out there defending these guys for years in a way that makes you question whether or not this thing is a total left-wing hack job? And that it's been completely institutionally captured by guys like Jim Comey, who used to run it, who put their people in place, and those people are still chirping in the ear and grabbing the shoulder of Dan Bongino when he walks in. Thank God you're here. We got to show you some things. We need to tell you what's really going on here. By the way, we're all the good guys. You know who the bad guys are? The whistleblowers. The guys who actually brought things forward and actually paid a cost for it. I got a real problem with an FBI director that goes out and lies in front of Congress. You heard some stuff if you guys listened to that interview last night. If you didn't, I'll just let you know. He went out and said that you have to be transparent with the American people, but you have to be transparent with Congress. You have to bring them information when Congress asks for it, which was something Chris Wray was really good at hiding. This is Kash Patel being asked by Dick Durbin, and he's subsequently been accused of perjury because he claims two things. One, he said he had nothing to do with, and I didn't know this at the time because this would have really bothered me when I found out. He said he had nothing to do with getting FBI employees fired. We have a specific timeline that goes into January and February of this year where he stated definitively to me and other guys you may have seen on this program, that he had people fired in the FBI before he worked there. Why he said he didn't, I don't know. He also said he didn't know someone named Stu Peters. I've never been on Stu's show. I was invited a while ago. He always seemed kind of like a bad actor to me. I don't know enough about it, but some of his stuff out there seems like blatantly anti-Semitic and not like in a constructive way. Here he is being asked about, do you know anything about Stu Peters? And apparently he was on his podcast 8 times. I've been on podcasts where I don't remember people. I've never been on a show 8 times and not remembered them. Here he is under oath to Dick Durbin.
You familiar with a Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi.
Okay. Maybe we ask Stu Peters what he thinks about that. Did Stu Peters think that Kash knew him and that they knew each other and that they had their personal phone numbers and that they interchanged messages? Oops.
Clearly, Kash Patel's lying. Yeah, he absolutely does know who I am, and he's very familiar on a lot of different levels. And I'm not going to get into that right now because this guy is going through a Senate confirmation hearing. So I'm not going to get into too many personal specifics at this point, but that's flagrantly false, what he said there. And I don't want to hear this 6 million D chess stuff about how Kash Patel just has to get through this part of it, and then he just has to get in there and infiltrate so that he can root out all of the rats and the Jews and, the globalists. No, that's not what's happening here, okay? He's doing what his people do.
Ugh.
It's just inherently in them to lie and be deceitful.
Stu Peters, by the way.
And he's lying.
But he is lying.
He didn't say, yeah, I know Stu Peters. As a matter of fact, I know Stu Peters well enough that my organization that I founded called Fight with Kash, which was designed to protect people against defamation by the media, real defamation, not the ones that Greenblatt is into, real defamation like at the hands of the Rolling Stone, who made up a story out of whole cloth and then attributed a quote, just blindly wrote this quote out of midair, something that I never ever said before, and then published it with quotation marks around it and then said, Stu Peters said. I never said it. And we proved that I never said it.
He said plenty of bad things.
And so Fight with Kash came to the aid of Stu Peters and the Stu Peters show because of Kash Patel personally, who personally knew me because of multiple appearances on this program. And then we exchanged contact information and we directly text via personal cell phones constantly. Right. And we're on the phone with each other as Fight with Kash was hiring a team of attorneys to represent Stu Peters and the Stu Peters network against the Rolling Stone.
Okay. That's definitive to me. I guarantee you that man can prove that he actually had access to Kash. And Kash went out and said he didn't. Now listen, here's the deal. This is how FBI people are advised. It's like, I don't remember him, not off the top of my head. Is that a lie? Yeah, it's a lie to honest people. You cannot go out and start your confirmation hearing with freaking lies and then run the FBI where you can be fired as an FBI employee for a thing called lack of candor. They charged me with lack of candor under oath for a joke that I made to my boss. I didn't have any oath. He asked me something and I like winked at him and it was obviously a joke. He was like, hey, did someone give you permission to put that RMR on the top of your handgun? And I go, oh, I'm part of a pilot program. And he was like, oh, really? A pilot program? And I'm like, yeah. Like, don't ask any more questions. I want an RMR on my gun. By the way, everybody was allowed to get an RMR after that. And I got it done by the same company that the FBI was paying. I just did it on my own dollar because I wanted it. And who gives a shit what can I carry for the FBI? That's always the dumbest thing about it. But if you want to hit me up for like carrying a gun that had an optic that was approved by the FBI but wasn't approved for Kyle Seraphin, knock yourself out. But to claim that I was lying about something, you can get fired for that. And he went in front of the Senate and did that. Now, I'm no fan of Stu Peters. Like I said, I don't know the difference between him and Pete Santilli, and I've always made the joke that I don't know it, but I don't want to go on either one of their shows. And I've been invited on both multiple times. But like, I believe him because he has no reason to lie about that. I'm confident that that is accurate, the thing he just said. And what you got is the director of the FBI lying under oath multiple times. He did it again later. And we put a whistleblower disclosure saying, hey, if you guys want to prove this, like, not only do we know that people that that Kash allowed to stick around from New York were involved in that quote unquote whistleblower movement, which it is, it's a violation of rule, policy, or law. So they are covered. It just turns out they tossed him out. That guy's name was James Dennehy. He's the dude from the bagpipe video that you guys saw getting kicked out of New York. Isn't that interesting? You can't start your job on a lie and then press forward and think it's going to be okay. Not at the FBI if you're going to try to de-weaponize it the way that you heard Ed Martin talk about. All right, that's the breakdown. That's where we're going today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope that was edifying. Some of you disagree with me. Put it in the comments. No big deal. I don't mind if we don't agree. It's allowed. Rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. If you want to leave a comment there, knock yourself out. Give us a like while you're at it if you watch the video. Hopefully you at least have a perspective. May not be the same as mine. Same thing over on YouTube. I appreciate your comments over there. It's youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. Fill it in there. Give us a like as well. Locals, if you want to support us financially and directly, you can do so as a free or as a paid member. It's KyleSeraphin.com. Easy to do, and you'll find all the links to the articles we talked about early on. Share the show with a friend. Send them KyleSeraphin.com. Don't even tell them why. Just send them a link, KyleSeraphinShow.com. Send it into a text message. Push that along. I've got an interesting interview coming up for this Sunday, if we can get it out and produced in time, and it'll be a contrasting point of view on what I'm saying, because I'm not afraid to have somebody push back on this, and I appreciate it. Somebody who knows Kash and says he's a friend of him. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I won't spill the beans until we actually get it done. It's supposed to be this afternoon. So that's what we got going on here at the show. Make sure you're following the channel everywhere. God bless all of you. Thanks for being with us. I will have you a good palate cleanse tomorrow for our Friendly Friday. I quite promise it, because we'll just try to spring something on Steve Friend. Have a fantastic day. We're going to go over to the American Radicals podcast if you're watching right now over on Rumble, and you guys can enjoy that too. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.